Hey folks, this is a quick tutorial on how I animate metahumans in Maya. So if you've imported them before, you've probably noticed that there's controls for the face but none for the body. So this is kind of a workaround. What I had to do was create a proxy rig using the low detail version of the metahuman and transfer that animation over to the metahuman and then select all the joints and export. So this is cool because you can do all your animation here and clean up mocap or whatever you have to do, and then also add all your face animation so you get it looking how you want. And then you can export everything to Unreal, and so far the results are just what I want. So let me get started on how I did that. So first you're going to need the Advanced Skeleton Auto Rigger. You can just Google Advanced Skeleton or go to animationstudios.com, and there's a free download if it's non-commercial, and just get the latest version, install the scripts in Maya, and everything should be ready to use. So let's start by adding our metahumans to Maya. You can select any of these templates or grab some metahuman that you've created already, and I'm just going to export that to Maya. If you haven't done this before, you can just make sure your download settings are set so that you are getting the source asset, not just the U asset. And then it should download properly through the plugin. And if you have Maya open already, it'll just pop up that you want to open it here. So yes. Okay, so then your metahuman should come in just like this. And you can see there's already a control rig set up for the face, but no way to animate the body yet. So if we turn on our joints in X-ray mode, we can see that they're working, but we just need a control rig that will let us animate this. So what we're actually going to do is build a control rig on top of this and then use that to drive these joints. So we got to make sure that our scene is ready for building another rig in Maya. And one thing that's interesting about these Maya files, the way that Metahumans imports, is that they actually have Z in the up direction, which is not the best for building Maya rigs. So we can go to Windows, Settings, Preferences, and under Settings we can change it so we have our Y in our up direction. Okay, so save that. And the reason we're doing that is I'm going to be building the rig with Advanced Skeleton, which only recognizes Y as up. So if I import the biped, it's rotated 90 degrees compared to our metahuman. And don't need that quite yet, but that gives us an idea that we need to rotate this 90 degrees, or negative 90 degrees. And then we're going to save this out as a separate reference file. And just to make life easier, I'm going to delete the highest poly versions because we can always import them again. And save this as Gavin full rig ref. And maybe put a reference to Y up. Alright, so this is ready and placed for us to build our rig on top of, but we're actually going to do that in a new scene and reference in the skeleton from what we just had. So Gavin full rig ref Y up. Alright, so now our guy is in there as planned, and we can go ahead and see our joints again and hide the geometry for now. So now we can start placing our joints for our rig. This is Advanced Skeleton. It's an awesome free tool that you can use if it's non-commercial. And you can import the default biped. Just import. And it's always going to build with these controllers facing up in the Y direction, which is why we needed to have our scene set up that way. And scale the default up by 10. And then we can start placing our joints onto these joints. So that's as simple as holding V and snapping it. And for some of these, it's easier to unparent first. And for some of these, it's good to view the geometry again, minus the flip-flops if you care. And that way you can move these to line up with the feet better. And these are just for the foot roll, so that should be all right. Now, the way the Advanced Skeleton builds is it likes to add extra joints along the spine, extra root joints and then extra spine joints. And we want to control the number of joints so it matches. So under the root we'll set the in-between joints to 0, and same thing for the spine, set it to 0, because we don't want those to be placed automatically. We do want to be able to place them manually. So put the spine 1 at the first spine joint, and then let's see how many we need for the spine. So this chest joint is going to be up here. So we need 1, 2, 3, 4, I believe. So in Advanced Skeleton, you can resample this joint between the root and the chest, or actually between spine 1 and the chest, and I think 4 was the right number. Okay, that seems to have broken it. Let's see what happened. Maybe 5 including spine 1. So that one's spine 1. Put in the right place. Spine 2, 3. And we're still short by 1. So resample this. 6. Spine 4. And then the chest. Okay. So just to make sure, we've got in-between joints turned off, and our new joints don't have any of that stuff on it. Okay, so we can continue going up the hierarchy here. Rotate some of these into place. And continue holding V and snapping. Now you just want to make sure that as you're snapping these on, that the rotation is facing in the right direction. So another way the geometry is helpful is making sure that this aligns properly to how the thumb would bend, so in this direction. Okay, so the fingers are definitely the most tedious part, and now just make sure everything is laid out. And gotta continue the neck. Okay, so that resample isn't quite right, but you can just set this in between one joint in between, which should have the correct rotation. And these face joints don't really matter as much because we're going to still be using the Metahuman face rig. But just for the sake of completeness, I'll snap it to the eye. Okay, so once you're happy with how your joints are laid out, you can process the advanced skeleton just by going to build advanced skeleton. Alright, so now the advanced skeleton is built out, and you can test that the joints are working and use these little switches to switch to IK and see if the arms move around like you want. Use these pole vectors to twist it. And use these finger controllers to make a fist. Let's see if that works. Okay. So let's just say we're happy with that, and you've tested the way all your joints are moving, and you can always go back to toggle fit advanced so that you can reposition some of these joints and then rebuild if you're not happy with it. So now we've got our rig built. We can go ahead and remove our metahuman reference. Remove. So now we need to find out how to attach the two rigs. So we're going to use the human IK system and create a new character definition, and then assign all of our joints we need to move to this template. So starting with our root, assign selected, to our hip, to our knee, and then the foot. And a lot of times it'll notice the mirroring automatically. So assigning spine 1, and then just going up the spine. To the chest, and the clavicle, then the shoulder, the elbow, and the hand. And something went wrong with the symmetry right there, so I'll just reassign it again. And then for our neck joints, click the drop down and assign. And then the head. So that's, for the most part, a character definition. We could go through and add all the fingers as well. Okay. And looks like it picked up all the mirrored fingers. So now we have our full character definition, and we can go ahead and save this rig. Just call it Gavin Drive Rig Test. All right, so now we have all our joint associations set up with this rig. We have to do the same thing for the rig we're going to drive with it. So open back up our Gavin ref y up. And just turn off polygons for now. So this one already has a selection name, so I'm just going to use that. Character definition name, rather. And we'll just assign everything like we did before. Okay, so that second character definition is done. Just one thing to be careful of when you're doing the fingers, make sure the end points are the ends, because it doesn't actually have joints that go all the way to the tips. The last joint here is where it should be bending. Okay, so now we've got our character definition set up for both rigs. We're just going to stay in our Gavin rig file and reference in the drive rig we made. And then we'll just select and isolate that and add some simple animation on here. So just have it move over and do some squats. I'm just going to set these arms to IK mode and the pull vectors to follow. And just have him do a little reach up. Alright, so it's good enough for test animation. So then we attach the rig to the drive rig by selecting character definition for our metahuman, and then as the source selecting our drive rig. So now it moves over and raises its arms. This is a problem that always happens with retargeting through human IK, where the rig is offset by a bit. So you can go back to the definition, and under character definition settings, go to edit HIK properties, and the hips need to be set to user, and then ankle height should also be user. And now it's going to follow more accurately. Alright, so then once you have it attached, now you can see that it follows the animation. And if this was an animation you wanted to export, you could just click this drop down and then bake to skeleton, and then just select the whole route for the body to export the body animation. And because of how this rig works in Unreal, you have to do the face animation separately. So now you can do the face animation and the body animation within Maya. So this is pretty heavy to animate, so I would recommend doing your animation first and then transferring it to the metahuman. So what I've done is created a proxy geo from the lower LODs of the metahuman and bound that to our drive rig. So we have a version of the drive rig that has geo on it, and then we can apply our motion capture or all of our animation to this. And then when we're ready, we can transfer that onto our metahuman rig. So here's a file with both of them in there. The drive rig and the metahuman rig. So you would finish all of your animation on the drive rig and then transfer it over to the metahuman you want to use, and then bake out and export your joints. And that's just a matter of file, export, exporting it as FBX, and baking the animation for the frame range you want. And you don't have to select any mesh, just the joint hierarchy you want to export, because the mesh already exists in Unreal. And make sure to include children in your export. But I already did that, so I won't do it again. And then you can put it on your rig in Unreal. So when you import this animation, just make sure that you're selecting the MetaHuman base skeleton. And then you can add, click the track to add the body component, and then click the body component to add an animation track. And then you can add your animation here. And then you've got your Maya animation in Unreal. So hopefully that was helpful for you guys. I know I prefer to animate in Maya versus trying to use the control rig in Unreal. And this is a way that you can do all of your body animation and face animation in Maya and bring it over to Unreal in a way that seems to work. All right, thanks so much for watching.